Hey there, and welcome to our interview with the fantastic Rob Woodcox. We're going to talk about his journey up until this point.
Thank you, Aaron, so much for having me here. It's been a blast, filming with the Phlearn team. Such an amazing example in the community for education, for photography. So thank you for having me here. Gotta bolster you up a little bit.
I appreciate that. So you're doing a lot of super cool projects, like your projects with dancers, where you're working with multiple dancers to create these like fantastic scenes. What's the background behind that idea?
So when I started my dancer series, I was actually living in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
I was very involved in sort of the activism scene, and just politics have been super stressful the last few years. And I wanted to try and create art that started to sort of cut through all of that noise. And so the first image I actually created in my dance series was sort of like a pyramid of dancers kind of rising up, and they're lifting up this girl, and she's the queen of this scenario. After I created that image, it kind of took off on Instagram, and it was, I hadn't really felt super refreshed by my own work in a while, but this was like, it got me excited about photography again.
Cool.
It's beautiful seeing how that series and that work really has been doing what I intended for it to do, which is bringing people together.
Yeah, and it seems like it's shining a little bit of a light. What do you find in your life like brings about your creative moments, and what's going on during those down moments?
So I've definitely had those phases where it's like, okay, this isn't like just me running around in a field as a 19-year-old anymore. It's like, I have to make money, I have to pay bills, and also like,
Right.
I'm not always creating just for myself. I might be creating for a client. But for me, I've found that finding that balance between creating personal work and creating work for clients, and also, going hard and hustling and doing the jobs, but then also taking breaks. Like, it's so important. You just have to find that balance that works for you. And for me, again, like doing personal work is so important to me, and I've never let that go.
That's fantastic. Having clients and working with clients, it's like it's fantastic. Like, that's
Absolutely.
the dream, right? It's
Absolutely.
like, I get to take pictures and get paid for that. But that personal work, that's what's going to drive you from day to day. And
Absolutely.
And I've talked with a lot of photographers who said that like their personal work is a lot of times what gets them more business clients. It's not always the business work that you do. It's like the personal work that propels your career forward.
Yeah, like I've been contacted by clients that want me to recreate things that are similar to what I've already created. So it's like if I put out, senior portrait photos, I'm probably going to get contacted to do senior portrait photos. I know when you're starting out, it can be hard to find that balance. And when I was starting out, I totally did all of that stuff. I shot weddings. I shot
Whatever, right?
Whatever, really. So I never saw it as like, oh, like I don't like weddings. Like I knew I didn't want to build a wedding business. I don't hate weddings. I actually love them. They're fun to shoot, but like in my head, I'm seeing this as practice. This is going to help me get closer to where I want to be. And then on the sharing front, where it's like marketing and putting myself out there, I just didn't show that work. It's like I did this, I delivered it to the client, I got a nice check, but I continued to do my personal work and show that to the world, because that's what I wanted to like continue to build.
Are you funding these projects from what you're getting from your commercial clients?
So it's a mixture of things.
Okay.
Some projects I get funded by sponsors. Sometimes they just, want me to mention them in social media or create content for them in the midst of my creation process. A lot of it is personally funded. So, I'll make a check from, Universal Pictures, and then, that enables me to then make my own personal art for a while, which is nice.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in my life, there's always a constant like balance of like doing like the work and like receiving the client and, figuring out what they want and always having that in the background. But then, I don't know, at this point, I'm pretty good at just kind of working on the fly. So it's like, I'm going to be in New York next week. Hey, dancer friends, like, let's get together. Like, let's pull this together, even if it's last minute. But it's like, I'm so used to like creating my work that it flows freely. So I can really balance like having clients and creating personal work and staying fulfilled, and it's really great.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're pretty much keeping art at like number one. It's not like you're taking your checks from your clients and then like, I'm going to go see, I'm trying to get like the fanciest car, or like, let me go buy this thing, or like, let me like show off in this way. It's like, I'm going to take that and reinvest it into my art, reinvest it into myself.
100%.
That's so cool. Is it kind of all cold calls? Like, hey, I want to work with brand X. Let me just cold call them. Let me just put together packets. Like, I think it'd be cool to get to work together. This is who I am. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, it's a mixture. So I do put myself out there quite heavily on social media, and I socialize quite a bit. But outside of that, we make a lot of cold calls. So we're seeing brands we want to work with, and we want to make them know that we exist. So we just send the communication forward. And what's cool is like everybody has needs, like especially with visual content. It's like brands need marketing campaigns, celebrities need visuals for everything. They need it for social media, they need it for their albums. And so if you just like put your stuff out there and someone vibes with it, like chances are you might get hired. And especially if you do your diligence and you kind of research these companies. So we don't just email or call or whatever like Apple just because it's a big name. We research a company. We say, what are their values? What are they currently creating? Is their content in line in some way with like what I create? Same with like a celebrity that I might want to work with. It's like thought out. Like we're really trying to target like people that we would want to work with.
That makes total sense. So let's get into, I want to know some mistakes you made along the way and what you learned from them.
So there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first one is knowing your worth. So I remember one of the first big jobs that I accepted, I basically signed up for a month's worth of work for about $1,000. One of my first jobs. And I just remember, my expenses at that time were much lower. I was much younger, but it was about like, my expenses were about $1,500 a month. And I just remember like getting that check after like a month's worth of work and just being like, I just sold my soul for this job. Just like, if I had said no to that job, who knows? I could have spent that whole month finding other jobs or booking other things that would have actually been worth my time. Another one would be not signing contracts with really complex, complicated things, or with people that you've never met, things like that. I'll agree verbally to, take this photo shoot, but we don't specify like how many images the person is getting or something like that. And then they're coming at me wanting like 100 images. And I'm like, this is only worth like 10 images. And then you have that awkward moment where you're like, I never did my due diligence of like explaining that or signing a contract or writing it out at least in an email. I mean, emails are legally binding. So it's like,
yeah, if it's like written down and there's a paper trail, even if it's electronic.
Yes. I know it's really hard when you're like starting out because you don't have like anything to compare it to and you don't have the experience yet. But even when you're starting out, it's like charge competitive rates because not only does it hurt you and make you're like working more than you should for like a low amount, but if you're charging lower rates or you're purposely doing it to be cheaper than the other person, you're not just hurting yourself, but you're hurting the industry as a whole.
The whole industry.
Because now that client's going to go to everyone and be like, well, this person only charged $200. What about you? And then that puts people in an awkward position. And when you're young too, it's hard to navigate that. I mean, at this point, I'm like, no, you're crazy. Like you start to learn that with experience. But if I can like help anybody to like just believe in themselves early on, like you are worth it. Like you go to school for this, you spend your time practicing it, you have a bunch of equipment that you have to buy, you put hours into each, commission. And so it's like, know that worth. Think about all the time you're putting in. Think about what like someone in a well-paid job in any other industry would be getting paid and stick to it. And with time, anything that you're doing in business is going to build with time. So be patient, like build your reputation, take one job and then use that to, tell people, hey, I did this. Now let me do it for you. And slowly, I mean, your list just grows and eventually it does start to snowball and support you more and things do level out more and it becomes slightly easier to get those next opportunities.
How I started out was like, what do I need to live and like how much do I want to make per hour. And then like for me, that's like my starting place. Like I
Absolutely.
am never going to go below this hourly rate for this job. And then most of the time, you know, you want to go a decent bit above that hourly rate, like at least double minimum wage, like baseline.
Absolutely.
And that's like, you have like maybe a year of experience. Like that's like where it starts.
Yeah. I would agree.
You know, and then I would say like with each couple of years of experience you have, it should double from there. My general advice is don't ever go below an hourly rate that, you know, you would get at like an actual job that, you know, like a salary position.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, those numbers are going to be different for everyone and different for all types of, you know, people out the world. That's why I don't want to like say, you know, like specific numbers.
That is what makes it a little bit challenging in the creative industry is there is no exact standard to go by necessarily. And it does change. I mean, you have to consider like the size of the client, the size of the reach of whatever it is that you're creating for them and like all of those things. And those can play into raising or lowering the pitch that you give. But like you said, at a baseline, like at least pay yourself a good living wage, like comparable to other careers, because think about it. Everybody else makes their money because of us. 100%. If you think about it, it's like if you're an actor, if you're a singer, if you're a brand that sells microwaves, it's like what sells that to people? It's the pictures of your product. It's the pictures of your face. And so as creatives, I think we have to stand up for each other and remind each other that like, your job is valid, what you're doing is valid, and you need to stick up for yourself. And you need to set that standard for yourself so that, you know, the industry as a whole can be raised and be as rich and fruitful as it can be.
100%. And it's always a negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always a negotiation.
Yeah.
And in any negotiation, as the artist, you throw out a higher number than what you might actually want to get paid because it's a negotiation. So,
absolutely.
You know, you'll say, I want to earn this much for my job. They're probably going to counter somewhere around here, and you'll probably meet somewhere in the middle. So don't start out with that middle price because what you'll wind up getting will be even lower than that.
Yes, exactly. If a client is serious and worth your time, they're not going to get scared away by a price. They're just going to talk to you about it.
They run from your price, then they're not a good, you don't want to work with them.
You don't want to work with someone who's not willing to communicate. So
right, you told me that story this morning when you sent a bid to a client and they just never responded.
I mean,
okay, good.
Okay, fine. We've worked that out. We'll move on. Yeah.
Well, I think that's some fantastic advice. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
For this
Anytime.
tutorial and just, you know, like sharing yourself as an artist, sharing yourself as a person, and of course the business side as well. So
yes, so important for us all.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for watching as well. I hope you learned something, and good luck building your photography career. Stick with it.
Do your homework. You got this. I believe in you.
Keep going.
I personally believe in you.
Thanks so much. You want to say I'll Phlearn you later?
I'll Phlearn you later.
Bye, everyone. Woo!
Awesome.
Nice. How do you feel about it? Done? Is it done? Yeah, rock and roll.